9 years have passed since the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. June 23, 2016, marked a turning point in British history, setting off a transformation of the country's economy, politics, and global standing. As 2025 ends, the passions of the referendum have faded, but its consequences still shape daily life and national policy. The debate is no longer about whether Brexit should happen, but about what it has meant and where the UK goes from here. The process of leaving the EU was a long, complex journey of negotiations, crises, and adaptation. The stark warnings of economic collapse didn't fully materialize, nor did the promised global Britain boom. Instead, the UK faces new trade barriers, persistent economic challenges, and a political landscape forever changed by the referendum's divisions. To understand today's UK, we must revisit the milestones, triggering Article 50, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, and years of adjustment. Businesses, government, and the public have all had to adapt, from customs checks to new trade deals and shifting opportunities. This analysis will explore Brexit's economic and political consequences, comparing forecasts to reality, and examining how public opinion and party politics have evolved. The aim is not to refight old battles, but to provide a clear, factual account of the journey since 2016. Let's begin by tracing the timeline of division and change. The process of implementing Brexit involved significant political developments and differing viewpoints. Following the close result in the referendum, David Cameron stepped down as Prime Minister, and Theresa May initiated Article 50, beginning the formal process of leaving the European Union. Theresa May's proposed withdrawal agreement did not pass in Parliament, resulting in ongoing discussions and divisions within the Conservative Party. In 2019, Boris Johnson became Prime Minister with a commitment to complete the Brexit process. He won the general election and the UK left the EU in January 2020. During the transition period, the UK remained in the single market and customs union, while negotiations for a future trade agreement continued. Negotiations with the EU concluded with the Trade and Cooperation Agreement on December 24, 2020. The agreement established zero tariffs on goods traded between the UK and the EU. However, new non-tariff requirements were introduced, including customs checks and regulatory procedures. Many businesses, particularly smaller ones, experienced higher costs and longer processing times. The Northern Ireland Protocol introduced additional arrangements, and the Windsor Framework in 2023 aimed to facilitate trade. As the global economy adjusted, the long-term effects of Brexit became more apparent, influencing the UK's economic landscape. Before the referendum, most economists warned that leaving the EU would harm the UK economy. Dire forecasts of recession didn't materialize immediately, leading some to dismiss the warnings as Project Fear. The Bank of England's interventions and the UK's continued EU membership delayed real economic changes. Only after the new trade relationship began did the true impact emerge. Recent data shows Brexit has negatively affected the UK economy, though separating its effects from the pandemic and energy crisis is complex. The Office for Budget Responsibility estimates a long-run productivity drop of 4% and a 15% fall in trade compared to staying in the EU. The reality is more nuanced than either side's 2016 narrative. No sudden collapse, but a slow erosion of growth and investment. The UK didn't fall off a cliff, but it's lost ground steadily. Measuring what might have been is challenging, but new methods help clarify Brexit's true economic cost. The story is one of lost growth and reduced trade intensity, not dramatic crisis. Let's look at how economists measure these unseen effects. To assess Brexit's impact, economists created a synthetic UK, a doppelganger built from other advanced economies that match the UK's pre-referendum performance. By comparing the real UK to this synthetic twin, analysts isolated Brexit's effects from global trends. Studies show a persistent gap. After the referendum, and especially after the new trade deal, the UK's economy, trade, and investment lagged behind its doppelganger. This method, respected for its rigor, confirms that Brexit, not just global shocks, has driven the UK's underperformance. The evidence is clear. The UK's growth path is now consistently lower than it would have been, with long-term consequences for prosperity. These findings form the foundation for understanding Brexit's economic legacy. Applying the doppelganger method to key indicators reveals a clear pattern. UK GDP is now 4 to 5.5% smaller than it would have been without Brexit. Tens of billions lost each year. Trade intensity dropped sharply after leaving the single market, with new frictions hitting exports and imports, especially for small businesses. Business investment stagnated after the referendum, diverging from other G7 countries, and remains subdued even after the trade deal. The cumulative effect, lower growth, weaker investment, and a real impact on living standards and public services. Slower productivity growth means wage stagnation and lower household incomes. These aren't dramatic events, but a steady drag on the UK's fortunes. The next question: did Brexit deliver the promised productivity boom? Brexit was supposed to unleash productivity and innovation by freeing the UK from EU rules and opening new global trade. In reality, the UK's productivity puzzle remains unsolved, and Brexit has likely made it worse by reducing trade openness and investment. Most new trade deals simply replicate EU terms. The few new agreements, like with Australia, have minimal economic impact. Regulatory autonomy brought some successes, like rapid COVID-19 vaccine approval, but overall economic gains are limited. The OBR still forecasts a 4% long-term productivity hit from Brexit. Geography matters. Trade with distant partners can't replace lost EU business. The promised productivity boom remains elusive. 9 years on, Brexit's divisions still shape UK politics and society. Most now believe leaving the EU was a mistake, a sentiment known as Brexit, but the shift isn't uniform. Younger voters favor closer EU ties, older voters remain more supportive of Brexit, though even some Leave voters express disappointment. The referendum reshaped political identities, with Leaver and Remainer rivaling party loyalties. These divides influenced elections and persist in voting behavior, making politics more volatile. The acrimonious Brexit debate eroded trust in politicians and institutions, normalizing a confrontational style. While Brexit no longer dominates headlines, its legacy is persistent polarization and a struggle to rebuild national unity. The UK is no longer debating whether to leave, but is still searching for its post-Brexit identity. This division is mirrored in party politics. For major parties, Brexit is a political minefield best avoided. Conservatives focus on making Brexit work, reluctant to admit economic downsides and risk alienating core voters. Labour, wary of reopening old wounds and losing red wall support, rules out rejoining the single market or customs union. The Liberal Democrats remain pro-European but have softened their stance, aiming for long-term change. No major party now advocates reversing Brexit, leaving many voters without a clear political home. The result? A disconnect between public opinion and political options, fueling disillusionment. For now, British politics is about managing Brexit's consequences, not revisiting the decision. As 2025 ends, the UK is quietly adjusting to life outside the EU. The feared catastrophe didn't happen, nor did the promised boom. Instead, the UK faces steady economic headwinds and persistent divisions. Economic evidence shows a smaller, less dynamic economy, with lost opportunities and constrained public finances. New trade deals and regulatory freedoms haven't offset the impact of barriers with the EU. Politically, the country remains divided, with no consensus for major change. Brexit is now a quiet, shaping force, its full consequences still unfolding. The story of Brexit is far from over. Its shadow will shape the UK for decades to come.